My sophomore year at the University of Notre Dame, I went to study abroad in Santiago, Chile. And usually the exchange students there will live with one of the local families. But I went a couple months early and lived at an orphanage that was run by the Congregation of Holy Cross. And I enjoyed my time so much there with the children that I asked if I could stay there for the whole semester, and they gave me that permission. Well, as I was leaving, I promised the kids that I would come back soon to visit them. So that Christmas break, I cobbled together enough money from odd jobs, bought a ticket to go back to Santiago, and spent New Year's at the orphanage with the kids. Now, I didn't know how big of a party it would be on New Year's, but that was the one night of the year that the brother who ran the orphanage gave the children permission to stay up past midnight, from the littlest, who was about 3 or 4 years old, all the way to the teenagers. And so we were having a big party on New Year's Eve to celebrate the new year. And when it came time for midnight, I went outside with several of the older kids. They had bottles of champagne that their brother had given them, and we were going to spray it up in the air. At least that was the agreed upon plan. But when midnight struck, rather than spraying the champagne up in the air, I was attacked mercilessly. And by the time they were done, I was so dripping wet with champagne, it's like I had just gotten out of the shower. I mean, I was soaked to the bone. And even though it was summertime, of course, because it was New Year's in Chile, it still could be a little bit cold at night. So I didn't stay outside too long because I started to get a little cold. When I went back inside to the main living area, it was utter pandemonium, utter chaos, because here were about 26 kids who never got to stay up to midnight, so they were taking full advantage of it. So on the one hand, you had the TV, the big screen TV was on and blaring. At the other side of the room, the radio was on just as loud and just as blaring. You had kids dancing in one corner, throwing footballs in another, and running around in all sort of mayhem. So it was complete chaos. So it took me a couple moments to orient myself once I got back in the room. Well, when I did, I spied Anna Maria. She had just graduated from kindergarten that year, across the room, and she had this look of real concern on her face. And I started to worry. I wonder if one of the kids had been picking on her, or someone had punched her, or something had gone wrong, because she immediately began to start walking across the room towards me. And it was almost like Moses parting the Red Sea, because again, there was complete chaos in the room, but as she was walking over, it seemed like everything parted ways so she could come on a beeline right over for me. And again, my mind's racing, trying to figure out what scenario may have taken place, what may have gone wrong, who I was going to maybe have to punish, how I was going to have to comfort her. Well, when she came up to me, she asked me to bend down because, of course, I was much taller than her. So I got down on my knees, and still on my knees, I was taller than she was standing up. And then what took place in that moment, I'll never forget. Haven't forgot, and I will never forget. Because then, with this look of love on her face, like I've never seen again in my life, she reached down and grabbed the hem of her dress, and she lifted it up, and she began to wipe all the champagne off my face. It was a look of tenderness, of attention, of love that I don't ever recall seeing before in my life. Because in that moment, again, there was utter chaos in the room, but it was clear for Anna Maria at that moment, nothing else existed in the world. I mean, the balls were still flying, the music was still blaring, kids were running around, but she clearly on her face had no other care, no other concern but me. As she very slowly, very tenderly, but also very deliberately and very attentively kept wiping the champagne off my face. In that moment, thanks be to God, I had the grace to have this mystical experience and realize that the love with which she was looking on me in that moment is the same love that God looks on each and every one of us at every moment of our lives. God's love is so fixed on us, so attentive, that absolutely nothing can distract God from us. Yes, there's war and famine in our world. There are natural disasters, suffering, and pain. So many things that we think could normally distract God from us, take his attention elsewhere, perhaps forsake us or abandon us for even a split second. But that's not how God loves us. God's love is so attentive, so fixed on us, just like Anna Maria's love was so attentive and so fixed on me that evening, in that moment, that nothing, absolutely nothing, can distract God from us. His love is that focused on us. That was the message we heard so beautifully in the first reading, where God tells his people Israel, can a mother forsake her infant, or without tenderness think of the child in her womb? Well, of course not. We know a mother cannot forsake or forget her child. But then God says, even should she forget, I will never forsake you or forget you. I will never be distracted from you. That's how much I love you. That's how much I love you. With a God who loves us that much, with a God whose love is so attentive to us, there really is no need for us ever to worry. That's, of course, the message of Jesus in today's gospel. Do not worry about your lives. Do not worry about tomorrow. Do not worry about food or drink or clothing. Your heavenly Father will take care of all those things for you. You have no need to worry. And yet, of course, most of us spend a good portion of our lives worrying, being anxious, wondering if God is attentive to our lives and to our prayers, worrying if God will see us through the present difficulty or crisis in our lives, fearing perhaps that maybe God has forgotten about us or even forsaken us, gotten distracted from us because there's so much else in the world that's so more important. There's so much needs his attention more than we do. We often live our lives that way, in worry and anxiety and in fear. We have no reason to. Because God, again, like Anna Maria, is always looking on us with that gaze of love and attentiveness. The trick is we allow our gaze to get distracted. God can't be distracted from us, but we allow ourselves to get distracted by everything that's happening around us in our lives and in the world around us. We allow those distractions to take our gaze from that loving look of the Lord upon us, and so fear and anxiety set in for us. And it often happens, as Jesus points out in today's gospel, when we try to serve two masters. When we try to keep one eye on Jesus and one eye on something else in our lives. And we just can't do that. It's impossible. Once we begin to divide our gaze like that, we're not looking on Jesus and his love, and again, the fear and the anxiety come. One of the greatest of those false masters, as I like to call them, Jesus points out in today's gospel, and it's money, or mammon was the word he used, but mammon stands for money. And money certainly always tempts us, seduces us with the promise that if we have more money, we're going to have less anxiety, less worry, less fear in our lives, because we'll be able to provide for what we need. Money will be able, in some sense, maybe not to solve all of our problems, we think, but at least most of them. But from my pastoral experience at the parish I was at, I saw the reverse was often true more often than not. That with more money, with more material wealth, came more anxiety and more worry rather than less. Because now there's more bills to pay. There's more possessions to take care of, to try to protect. And so rather than having our worries and anxieties decrease, they actually increase the wealthier we become. The more that we shift our gaze a little bit from God to focus on money and material wealth. Anxiety and worry set in. Although money perhaps is a false god, a false master that we're attentive to and at least trying to protect ourselves from, there's another one that I think is very rampant in our society, and I certainly hear it spoken of a lot here at Notre Dame. And that's what I like to call the ever-elusive balance that we're seeking for in our lives. I've met a lot of people who say that they're looking to have a balanced life. And if they could just find that balance, everything would be okay. They'd be worry-free. They'd be anxiety-free in their lives. But for as many people I've met who are striving for balance, I still haven't met one yet who says they've found it. And most of the people who are striving for such balance tend to speak of a lot of anxiety and worry surrounding this pursuit of balance in their lives, that actually, rather than making them be more at peace, has them less at peace. That certainly was my own experience when I went to the parish where I was serving as a priest the first 3 years of my priesthood. I went there having had it drilled into me that I needed to make sure I had a balanced life. That I didn't have a balanced life, I could burn out pretty quickly, and my ministry career might be shorter or not as fruitful and life-giving as I wanted it to be. And so in the beginning, if I missed a workout one day because there was too much work, or if I had work spill over into my day off, I started to get anxious and worried, wondering, is this a sign that I'm not going to be able to make it for the long haul? Is this going to be something that will eventually burn me out? So I became so anxious and worried about missing the workout or having to work on my day off. Well, thankfully, I then remembered advice that someone gave us while we were in formation. And to summarize, it was basically this. That very wise man told us, stop striving for balance in your life because you'll never achieve it. Stop striving for balance because balance is a false god. Live instead for your passion. Live instead for God, and God will take care of the rest. God will take care of you. If you're living for Him, if you're living for your passion, God will take care of the rest. And so I began just to forget about it when I didn't make my workout that day or when I had to do work on my day off. And I found little by little, actually, that my anxiety and my stress went down. And on days where I had to miss my workout, on days where I had to work on my day off, I wasn't anxious or fearful as before. I was actually filled with joy and life because I was doing what gave me meaning. I was serving the Lord. I was living for my passion. I wanted to lay down my life for the people I was working with in that parish. And when I was able to do that, when I wasn't distracted by this notion of balance, when I was living fully for God, I came to see that God did take care of everything. That the anxiety and worry that used to fill my life were now replaced by joy and peace because I was being true to myself, and God then was taking care of the rest. Because I could feel that loving gaze of God, that attentive gaze of God upon me in my life, and I knew that everything with Him would be okay. I had no reason to worry. We have no reason to worry, to fear, to be anxious. We don't have to worry about our lives. We don't have to worry about tomorrow. We don't have to worry about money. We don't have to worry about balance. We don't have to worry about any of those other things that we allow to consume our lives, to fill them with anxiety and fear. We don't have to live that way. We don't have to waste another moment of our lives in fear and anxiety. We must, all we have to do is stop allowing ourselves to be distracted by those things and allow ourselves to look as attentively and fixedly on God as He looks on us. Because if we do that, we will then see the face of our God looking upon us with love, reaching out to wipe away all the anxiety and fear and stress from our lives. And then we can rest finally safe and secure in the arms of our loving God.